Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Emotional Grit, the podcast where you can learn about the power of perspective and the science that fuels us. I'm your host, Jennifer Fernjack, and I'm grateful to say that my guest today is my brother, Scott Fernjack. So, Scott, thank you for being here. And also, for anybody who's listening today, please feel free to like and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube at my Emotional Grit channel. So, let's get things started. So, thank you again, Scott, for being here. I know you're obviously in New York, I'm in Minnesota. But I knew that when I wanted to have an episode about silent discos, that you were the person who I wanted to talk to about it today. So thank you very much.
Sure
But
thing.
but just to kind of give the audience an idea of like what a silent disco is, as part of my research, one of the ways that I saw it couched is uh, situations where it's possible for people to dance to music that nobody else can hear. Like you literally, I know for me personally, I walked by a nightclub one time in Savannah, Georgia. I walked by these windows and the nightclub was very dark. And I saw all these people wearing headphones, and the headphones sometimes were purple, sometimes they were green. They had lights on the ears. They looked very kind of Princess Leia-ish. But the door was open for the nightclub and I couldn't hear any of the music. So I'm wondering if we could start with what your personal experience has been with a silent disco.
So I've encountered silent disco a couple times on accident. One was at a festival, like a what do the state fair kind of thing, the county fair with my family, and we were hanging out, and we realized people were like moving and grooving, but we couldn't hear anything, and we kind of like put two and two together. We're like, oh, they're all wearing headphones. So we jumped in, and our son was young at the time, just thought it was a total thrill and just like something so novel, and it was fun. It was a good time. And
Oh, yeah.
please go ahead.
Oh no, absolutely. I can see why it would be a blast because it's part of it's the music and but part of it's also the camaraderie of doing it and then just the novelty of it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So the second time I encountered silent disco was last year. Actually, I was doing some work down on South Beach, and part of the event that I was working at included some formal stuff during the day and then thrilling the guests in the evening. So someone had created a lawn on South Beach, and it was down from my window in my hotel room. So I was having a couple beers with my friends, and we're looking at the guests kind of like wandering around. We thought maybe they're going to do some like group yoga or something like that. And then all of a sudden they erupted dancing, and they looked like the Peanuts characters, all doing their moves and stuff. And again, we couldn't hear anything. And at that point, we couldn't even see the headphones until we like really scrutinized it. It was like this like crazy thing to just watch all of a sudden like burst out. And then we're like, oh, silent disco. Nice.
That's funny. So I'm picturing people like from the Peanuts cartoon, Pigpen, Linus, Lucy, whomever, all dancing by the piano, kind of like this, whatever. So you see these people doing that without hearing the music or seeing the headphones, and so you're just like, what's going on? So that's hilarious. Well, I know a couple weeks ago I was traveling for work and I met someone who talked about because I mentioned the idea of the podcast for silent discos, and she goes, "No way, I did one in a barn." And I said, "Well, how did you happen to do one in a barn?" Well, it turns out that a friend of hers got married on a farm, and the farm had a bunch of animals in the barn, and so that they didn't want to be disruptive to the animals, and so the people at the reception put on their headphones and literally in this barn just all were dancing to music that no one could hear, except for the people who had the headphones on. And some people listened to hip hop, some people it was country music, others it could have been pop or whatever your fancy is, but that's the cool thing about it is that it's not subject to just an individual song that maybe a few people like. Well, no, it's you can choose your own song through the headphones. So it's pretty, and then of course the animals weren't agitated or whatever in the barn too. So that's pretty amazing. But also as part of my prep work for the podcast, I did some research. So I'm going to pull up my phone here for a moment because I have an article on here for just kind of some of the reasons why people view things people view as benefits to doing silent discos. One of them is saying goodbye to noise complaints. And I would imagine, like with you living in New York City for as long as you did, I would imagine you probably either heard about or maybe even participated in a fair amount of parties and warehouses or whatever that people were having to like, go to by try to have it be private, but it's obviously very lousy. You're in the risk of getting in trouble. But like, did you ever hear about stories like that, or was that like not even a thing yet when you were in New York?
The silent discos? I had not encountered any silent discos when I was out and about. Definitely plenty of yeah, loud, rowdy evenings,
Oh
but
yeah.
no
Oh yeah.
silent disco quite yet.
I was gonna say, but by having the headphones and doing a silent disco, and literally it could be hundreds of people, that are there, and you just can't hear the music, you're not gonna get in trouble then. The next thing that I have here for benefits is the fact that you can play multiple genres at once. And so I know that you and I grew up listening to the likes of Beastie Boys and what have you, but not everybody likes that kind of music, so they might want something different. The next thing that's here is skip the bulky sound system. So for you being an AV guy, if that's even the right word, I don't know, for like tech stuff when it comes to music and all that kind of fun stuff. Like how much of a hassle is it to bring just like regular equipment places, or has equipment gotten smaller since we were younger?
Uh, the fidelity is improved considerably in some ways. And then like the amount of effort it takes just kind of depends on the budget. If people want to
Yeah.
splash the cash, like I'm happy to bring in a whole line array and, and rock your world. But yeah, like being able to travel light is always a nice touch as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think back to when I was doing my undergrad up in, northern Minnesota, of course, and my roommate Denise had these ginormous speakers that everybody else coveted. And of course, now there's probably like some kind of an app for it somewhere, but we were just like, whoa, she's so lucky to have those huge speakers. But the next thing that I have here for benefits of silent discos is that they work practically anywhere. So it could be a rooftop, some kind of like a barn, like I said, or to your point, like on the beach or outside a hotel or a warehouse. I mean, it's just again, you're probably more apt to get a permit for something that's needed because you're not going to be getting in trouble. Next thing is easy conversations equals happy guests. So if you're not talking like this,
Yeah, that's an
yeah,
important consideration.
yeah,
Like a lot of times people want to go to places to connect with other people. The music
yeah,
can definitely get in the way.
yeah, that's true. But you and I had talked the other day about sometimes there are trade-offs to this kind of stuff. So when it comes to silent discos, and then given your tenure with dealing with like sound systems and music and being a part of that whole scene in New York and what have you, what would you say like some of the potential drawbacks are, or some of the risks?
Well, I think that it's really important to consider your hearing. Uh, and I'm really particular about mine because I make my living using it. I make art with my ears, like it's a central part of my life. Like I'm using the Apple AirPods now, not to like endorse specifically the Apple ones, but like I'm wearing the crappier ones that don't have like the silicone tips. And I think that's really important. And like the levels at which you listen to music is like really important. And a special part about sound and music is the emotion of it and the feeling of it. But when all of that energy is like localized to your ears, it can be really intense. So depending on like the volume, but also the duration and like what you're listening to, I think that's really important. Like, of course, like if you go to a club and there's a giant sound system, it can be overwhelming as well. So maybe bringing some
Well,
earplugs or just managing and being able to get your groove on at some sort of reasonable level so you're feeling motivated and you're feeling it, but also being mindful that in the euphoria of the moment, you can really push those levels high, dangerously high.
I know some friends and I went to a concert a few years ago where two of them, unbeknownst to me, brought earplugs. Like I hadn't even thought of it because it had been so long since I'd been to a concert. And they're like, we're not sure if this means we're getting older or if we're just getting smarter. And then they put their earplugs in. But since I wasn't wearing any, the next morning my ears were actually ringing. And I
Yeah,
thought, well, that's
yeah, you'll
not
feel
good.
it.
So that's kind of strange. But I know that a few months ago I had somebody as a guest on the podcast here who is deaf, but she was on her college's dance team. And one of the core themes of the interview was, of course, if she can't hear the music, people would wonder, well, then how could you dance to it? But it's because she could feel it with her feet, and she could just feel the vibration of the music,
Yeah,
and
indeed.
that's that's why sometimes you'll see people who are hearing impaired or completely deaf at concerts. And have you ever met anybody who's either done sign language at a concert to have the lyrics showing for people, or maybe seen someone who's hearing
I've
impaired? Or
definitely seen it. I don't know anyone who's like utilized that service, but I could see why that would be super helpful, and how going to a concert or to a disco, a rave, whatever, where the music is at a volume where like it's moving air. I mean, sound is the intensification and rarefication of air. It's physically moving the air molecules around you. And I do think that's an important part of like going out dancing, is like you're feeling that. And I think that is in a really important like physiological and like spiritual and sort of like gratifying experience as a human to do that. And it's also
Mhm.
important to do it with other people. You know, like
Oh
there's
yeah.
something about going to a place, a wedding dance or a school dance, right, where people are moving in time together and something. Like we're social animals, we're social creatures, we want to be with the pack, and like to experience that together is a special experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what other kinds of risks can you think of, or just kind of like trade-offs to, wearing headphones like that, having the music concentrated at a silent disco?
Maybe not a liability, but like an interesting thing to observe would be like the people moving and grooving to different pieces of music. Because like usually when you see people dancing together corporately, they're doing it to the same music, and like there's sort of a flow to how people are moving. And the idea that people would be like dancing to music at different volumes or different genres, but like different beats per minute, is really funny to think that somebody's back there just like really letting it rip, and then someone's doing like the slow robot or
Right,
something.
right, right, right.
Like
Exactly.
quite the
Uh,
contrast.
do you remember Y2K?
Yeah, certainly.
Super random question. But for those of you listeners who aren't familiar with what Y2K was, there was a concern back in the late 1990s that any kind of computer system, whether it was helping navigate a plane or doing sound equipment at a concert or working in a hospital, any kind of a computer that only had a couple digits, that when those numbers turned to 00 for the year 2000, the computers would think it was 1900 and it was going to screw things up. And so people were afraid to fly, people were afraid to just do different things. But on that New Year's Eve, so it's 1999 going into 2000, I was at a nightclub in Minneapolis called the Fine Line. And there was this cover band there playing cover tunes from the 1970s. So it was all like disco kind of stuff or whatever. And I remember we all wondered, what's going to happen at midnight? Like, are the amps going to stop working for the guitar and the keyboard and whatever? And we all just kind of wondered. So imagine, here we are. There were probably, I'm guessing, maybe, I don't know, 50 or 60 people all on this kind of smaller dance floor, just dancing, all strangers, but being united by the music. Well, all of a sudden, one of the band members starts counting down for the new year. So he's going 10, 9, 8. And we're all standing there like, what's going to happen? Like, we thought the lights were going to go out or something. And then all of a sudden it hits midnight and nothing happens. So we start dancing again. It was just such a great way to unite with strangers,
Yeah.
and so now the thing is with silent discos, even though the other person that you're dancing with or people you're dancing with obviously could be listening to different music, at least there's still that camaraderie of being together in the moment. I know, especially for people who have sensory issues, maybe they can't be around like, for example, the most recent guest that I had on my podcast before this one has a condition called synesthesia, where if one of his five senses gets stimulated, it automatically triggers another one. And so he'll like taste colors or see sounds and things like that. And he talked about how he can't go to a sporting event, like a professional football game or something, because it's just the hum of the crowd or whatever. So he actually appreciates going to someone like him would appreciate going to a silent disco and maybe not even listening to the music. Maybe he actually appreciates having a conversation on the side of the dance floor and feeling like he could be there. Or there are people who have autism or different types of things that maybe could benefit from going to something like this because, again, they're not having to talk over music and whatever. But um, any other kind of like low hanging fruit you can think of when it comes to risks, or are those kind of the key things that come to mind?
I think those are the key things that come to mind.
Okay. Well, the other thing that I wanted to call out is that back in 2013, the heavy metal band Metallica had what was called a silent concert up in Antarctica. And I think this is fascinating. I don't think most people know this. So I pulled that up on my phone as well, and I want to read an excerpt from an article here about that, because I mean that's just so randomly awesome. But the concert was called Freeze 'Em All. And the description here reads, Freeze 'Em All was a one-off concert by the American heavy metal band Metallica, played in Antarctica on December 8th, 2013. It took place in a dome near the heliport of, and I can't pronounce this, Carlini Base in Argentine, Antarctica, and was attended by 120 people, ranging from members of the base's research team and winners of a sweepstake offered by the Coca-Cola Company. The concert featured 10 songs played over a span of an hour. To prevent noise pollution, the sound was played without any traditional amplification and was instead transmitted to the audience through headphones. The concert made Metallica the first band to perform on all 7 continents. The concert was later released as a live album and a documentary centered around the production of the concert and the band's time in Antarctica and was released in 2015. So how randomly awesome is that? That
Yeah.
people at the Metallica concert did it through headphones, so there wouldn't be noise pollution. But those were kind of the key things that I wanted to call out for people. I mean, first thing was building an awareness that silent discos exist. So people want to maybe have them for a wedding reception or just some kind of a party or a corporate event or whatever. I know here in Minneapolis, if you Google silent discos, you can rent the equipment and you can do it. So obviously, I know that we're not unique in that regard. But then I wanted to share or have people hear your stories as well, especially with people dancing like the Peanuts characters at that event. So, um, any closing thoughts you want to share with anybody?
Uh, that was well said and some interesting points. And go out there and enjoy music, go dancing, however you can do it. I think that it's important that people engage with music and engage with one another. And I love dancing. Any way you can get your feet on the dance floor, go for it.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you, Scott, for being here today. And to those of you again who want to enjoy this episode and others, please feel free to go to my YouTube channel at Emotional Grit and like and subscribe. Thanks, everyone.